Hello group, Jeff here. Get a twofer this month. This video is going to be about uh, using smart objects or smart filters and how uh, you can apply those in lieu of duplicating layers and then applying a filter in this example to that layer, duplicate layer, and then as soon as you hit OK, that destroys the underlying data and creates new data. And when you use a smart object or a smart filter, that doesn't happen. And it also allows you to go back after the fact and make changes to that particular smart filter or object. So what I will do is use my Pelican image and show you a little bit of a workflow that you could use. Now, I'm not going to get into masks. Masks are something that's they aren't difficult to use because a mask in Photoshop, white is where the effect is applied, black isn't. So there's a lot of ways to make masks. You can do color ranges, you can use color channels, and uh, there's just a lot of ways to play with masks. I'm not a big mask guy. I don't have time to be messing with masks. Maybe when I was younger and I was doing this for a living, I would have to, but not now. I just don't feel it's, uh, for me anyways, I don't feel that making masks are worth it. Maybe someday when I have a little more time, I might do that, but not today. So what I'll do is I'll open up Photoshop. And the first thing that I want to show you after I get rid of my plus here is that smart objects, you cannot perform an operation that after the pixel data, such as painting, dodging, burning, or cloning, uh, that you want to apply that to the layer. That's a destructive process. So in my case, where I'm removing the stars, that's an actual process that's changing the data. So a smart object isn't necessarily going to work there, but I've found a way to kind of get around that, but it's still destroying data. So there's a lot of ways in Photoshop to do this stuff. There are, where is it? You can convert the layer to a smart object. If you're going to apply a filter, you can convert the filter to a smart filter. It's basically the same thing. You can apply adjustment layers, and that's exactly what it states. It will put a new layer in and apply the adjustment to whatever's below it. If it's a smart object, you can use the adjustments and it will apply that to that specific layer. So I will load up my Pelican. Now this particular image, there's no need to run Astro flats on it because it's already flat. But what I can do is show you that workflow. So I'm going to click and make sure that this layer is selected. And then from here, I'm going to convert it to a smart object. And you'll get a little icon that's on the little thumbnail. And that's the smart object. It tells you that this layer has been converted to a smart object. So what I'm going to do now is go to filter, and you will see that convert to smart filters is ghosted. And that tells you that this smart object knows enough that when you apply a filter, to this layer that it's going to be something that you can change. So I'll just use we'll make this 20, I'll use the defaults just to show you something. We'll say okay. And then you'll see in the actual smart object, it creates like mini layers, if you want to call that. And I can turn that effect on or off. Now this is going to be a little slower because it's actually doing the Astro flats again. So when I turn it off, it is turning off the Astro flats. And then when I turn it on, it is turning the Astro flats back on. So it's got to reprocess the data. So if I want to go back into Astro flats, all you need to do is double click on the word and it brings me back into Astro flats and I can make a change, which I will do right there. And that's one way to work with this. Now I'm going to get rid of this Astro flats because I'm not going to apply this. Okay, so the smart object is applied. And what I want to do is show you this. And if I open up, oh, son of a gun, and say OK to this, you'll see that it's corrected my colors. But if I didn't like that, I can go back into it and we'll just make this one and say OK. And I don't like that change. I'm going to go back into it and we'll just make this 3.6 again, 3.6. And we get our color, excuse me, we get our colors back to the way we want them. So I'm going to use this. Now I could have done this in as a level, but I kind of like that particular filter. So I'm using that just to show you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. And because I'm going to apply my star extract filter on it, I can't extract the stars from this and then have it remember all that information that was done to this. So I need to convert the layer. I want to keep what was already applied, so I will say yes. And now I will make another duplicate. And I will apply my star exterminator to it. And this might take a little while because it's a huge honking image. And this is when you get into image scales this big. This is a 24 megapixel image, thereabouts. So that's 24 megs of data just in the one layer. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers going here. So I'm almost up to 100 meg already in these 4 layers. So after I get my stars extracted, I can then stay in the smart object realm for all of my stuff because I'm not going to be removing or destroying data per se. I'm going to be tweaking the data. So I wouldn't be as the uh, I showed you in the opening here, that if I was to do a healing brush, that's destructive. So that would have to be done on a layer, not a smart object. Now, some of the neat stuff that you can do is you can actually link to stuff that isn't loaded in Photoshop. So you could link to an image that's on the hard drive someplace. And this is where you get into proxies. So you would build up your flow or layers, and then instead of using high-res stuff, you would use a proxy or a low-res version of that file. Do all your work, and then once you get if you were to get approval for everything, or you were happy with everything, then you would change out those files wherever they're stored with the high-res data, and then away you go. So you're working in low-res, which is faster. And then when you're done, you can load up the high-res stuff, replace the low-res with the high-res stuff, and beautiful things are made that way. So once I have the stars removed, I'll have to make another duplicate. And it's basically my star exterminator flow. So now the stars are gone. We'll call this Starless. This will be a subtract. I'll merge that down. This is stars. And if I move it up, there are my stars. We'll do a linear dodge. And I can make this a smart object, and I can also make my starless layer a smart object. So what I want to do is move my stars down. I'm going to make the starless layer a smart object. I'm going to open up camera because that's what I would do next. Hit auto. Do my thing. $92. Wait. Black 60 will stay there. We'll just add a little texture, clarity. Now I pretty much use the same numbers here all the time because that's the look I like. I don't like to mess around with these too much. And we'll go into details. Now, when you use noise reduction, and in this case I'm using noise reduction and color noise reduction, you need to sharpen again to get the detail back. And that's what this does. So I'm cool with this. And now I'm going to run my and because this is such a big object, I need to have a little more radius. I'm happy with this, so I'll sharpen it. Now, if I was real picky, I would go in and remove these, but this is just to show you how to use smart objects or filters. Okay, very happy with this. So I'll leave that. Now I'll move my star layer back up. And what I can do with this layer is I'll also make this a smart object. Oops. And to show you that you can still use adjustments, I'll go to vibrance. And I'll crank up the vibrance on the stars. And then I'll crank the saturation up. I'll say OK. And you'll see that the vibrance layer is in. And I don't need to really shrink these stars, but I could if I wanted to. But this is, I'm very happy with this image. And you can see that I have, at any point up to the APFR final, I could go in and I could delete this APFR and make my changes and run the APFR again. And because if I make changes below the APFR, I'm not going to see those reflected here. And I can show you that with just by turning off the, oh, it did. I was mistaken. Well, be darned. Well, that's a bonus. I'll take that. I thought APFR actually was a destructive process because of the way it was layering the stuff up. So I can live with this. So I have a bunch of layers that are smart. In this case, these are smart filters were applied. I didn't use adjustment layers, but I could. If I applied one now, let's just for the hell of it, we'll apply the curve, and you can see it puts it on top. And what I can do is something like that. And it bloated the stars a little bit, but who cares? And because it's a smart layer, I can go, we'll just go into vibrance here. And you'll see the vibrance window opens. I'll say OK to that, and I can go back to my curves. There it is. Got to click on the right one, Jeff. So this is how you can work with adjustments or smart objects, smart filters. They have a few other names for them. It's kind of a convoluted mess, but it gives you a very, very nice way. Even if you didn't save this, I'll tell you right now, this will not be saved as a PSD file. So I'm going to go right into Save As on my computer. I'm going to pick the large document format, and we'll save it to the desktop. We'll take that and we'll save it. You'll see that this will take a bit to save because it's a huge hunkin' file. We're up to 30%. We're up to 34%. We're up to 40. Now we're saving to an SSD too, folks. So it's not like it's because my hard drive is full or slow. We're up to 56%. And the beauty of saving the PSD file is that you can open this back up and at any point go back in and start making changes again to the data. We're at 80. We're almost there. So what I'll do is I'll close this after it's saved. We'll go up to the desktop, see how big it is, and then I'll open it again to show you what I'm talking about. Now this is where you probably are sick of me saying this, but hard drives are cheap. Compared to what they were when I first got into computers, they're dirt cheap. And you would save your PSD files to a hard drive that you can just store on get like a USB 3, either a spinner. Spinners are cheap. If you want the speed, you get like a USB or USB-C SSD for stuff like this. Okay, it's saved, so I'll delete this. We'll go to did it not go to, here it is. We'll see how big this is. It is 2.61 gigabytes. Big files. So we'll say okay to that. I'll go back into Photoshop and we'll open it. There's my carbon 14 right there. Okay, so there's the document. And here are all the smart objects. So I can go in to camera raw. We'll turn camera raw off and you can see that, boom, it will reapply the setting. I can double click on the camera raw icon. Or not the icon, but the name. And I'm back into camera raw. So I can we'll go to basic and I'll just knock the, do something like that so you can see. Save it. And boom. So let me get this back. And we'll get the exposure up to, what was it, 60? Say okay. Just so I have a better image. So this is a workflow. It isn't the best workflow in the world, but this would be a way that you can use the smart objects, which can be gotten from here. Convert to a smart object. You can go from the filter, convert to smart filters. You can do it from layers, I believe, smart objects right there. And you can also import something as a smart object. So there's a lot of ways you can go. The only downside is they're huge honking files. I mean, this is almost 3 gigabytes. But, big but, is that if you have a hard drive you can just throw your PSDs onto at a later point as you get, or as you learn newer techniques, you can go back into this image the same way you made it and start making changes again from where you left off. So for this bonus video, if you have any questions, you know where I live. We'll see you in the group. Thanks.